Hi, I'm Charles Hood, and this is a nature note with the Altadena Public Library. I'm one of the authors of the Wild LA book, and today we're going to talk about 100 things to know about hummingbirds. Today we're going to talk about hummingbirds. There are 340 species worldwide. They're only found in the Western Hemisphere. That means North America, South America, Central America, and the Caribbean islands. Some are quite interesting. Here's one on the screen now, the booted racket-tail from Ecuador. We'll look at him in a little more detail in a moment. In California, 14 different species of hummingbirds have been recorded, and all the hummingbirds really share a number of remarkable traits. In relation to their body size, hummingbirds have the largest heart of any warm-blooded animal. Their heart beats about 500 times a minute when they're resting, on up to 1,200 times a minute when they're actually being active. That means that they have a relatively brief lifespan, a couple of years on average, all the way up to 12 years at the far end of the range. But on average, if you see a hummingbird, it's about 2, 3, 4 years old. With the heart beating that rapidly, it burns up its fuel very rapidly. They also have the most rapid wing beat of any bird, up to 80 wing beats per second. 60 is a little more typical, but 80 is possible. And that means that, among other things, they can fly up, down, forward, backwards, sideways. No other bird can fly backwards except for the hummingbird. That means they eat all day long to fuel this metabolism. And a hummingbird can eat up to 8 times its body weight per day. Now that's including the water, the weight of the water, if it's getting nectar from flowers or sugar water from a person's backyard feeder, but 8 times their body weight. Now, putting up a feeder is a great way to get to know your hummingbirds up close. A couple of things to think about. One is that you want to clean the feeder every other day or so. That sugar water will accumulate mold. Another fun thing to think about with feeders is that we used to be told they had to have red dye in the liquid. But as long as your bottle has a little red spout or a red cap, something that attracts the hummingbird in the first place, they'll figure it out. Don't put dye in your hummingbird feed. Some people are worried if you put up a hummingbird feeder in your backyard, you'll retard migration. The hummingbirds will be there in September and hanging around your yard and kind of forget to migrate away. And then what happens in the winter, it'll get cold and they'll die, and then you'll feel bad because you've killed all these hummingbirds and it'll be your fault. That is actually not how it works. When birds are ready to migrate, by golly, they're ready to migrate. And they may remember that on the migration route, your backyard is a really great place to get fueled up for that long journey, but you can't harm the hummingbird by having a hummingbird feeder up in September. Now, if you do have hummingbird feeders up in the winter, then obviously if you disappear for a few weeks, that's disrupting the food supply in a way they weren't prepared for. But your feeder by itself won't stop migration. Something fun about feeders that some people don't know is that there are nectar-eating bats, and they'll come to hummingbird feeders as well. Not here where we live. This would be down closer to the Mexican border in southeastern Arizona. But as you can see from this picture, bats have learned to come at night and get hummingbird food that way. Hummingbirds eat insects. They need protein. They can't survive just on sugar water. And they also will have a trap line, a lot of flowers in sequence that they'll visit. So even if they're actively interested in your feeder, they're still out foraging in nature. They need it to survive. And in this case, if we see this picture, the hummingbirds in my yard have discovered these pink flowers. Whatever they are, hummingbirds like them. So that reminds us that we want to think about having wildlife-friendly yards, and it's not that hard. In my backyard, we have some rescued lilacs, and it turns out butterflies like my lilacs. I didn't know that, but I'm very glad to have them. A good plant to think about is California fuchsia. Hummingbirds absolutely love this flower. Let's talk about the hummingbirds that you could see in your own yard or around the neighborhood if you go for a walk. There are several species that are here. One is called the Anna's hummingbird. The male has a very brilliant magenta throat and head. And then the female sometimes shows some magenta, but is typically green on the back, pale gray on the tummy. It typically is here in the summer, although some of them overwinter. and then some do migrate away. A different hummingbird is here all year round. That's the Allen's hummingbird, and both the male and female on this one show green with some cinnamon. The male also has sort of an orangey, bronzy colored throat patch, but the female has cinnamon on its back as well. They were originally limited to the coast and the Channel Islands. They're spreading throughout Southern California because we've done something very nice for them. We have these lush watered lawns and all these plantings, and so they're able to follow the flowers inland. There's a mother hummingbird that doesn't stick around in the summer, but passes through in spring and fall, called the Rufous Hummingbird. It's a bird of the high mountains, the bird of the meadows, and Rufous hummingbirds, when they have the male, are easy because they are cinnamon above and below, and they've got a little throat patch. However, the females and immature males are a mix of green and cinnamon, and basically it's really impossible, to be honest, to tell a migrating Rufous immature or female from a native resident Allen's hummingbird. They overlap almost completely except for the tail feathers. Another hummingbird that we can see here in the Los Angeles basin is the black-chinned hummingbird. We associate it more with deserts, particularly in places like Arizona or Texas, but here in coastal California, they've adapted to the city quite well, and you can see them in the chaparral, but also around your yard. The male is black-throated with a purple band below the black. So it's called black-chinned hummingbird, but it's got a little vivid band of purple right below it. And the female looks like a female anise. It's green above, grayish below. The ruby-throated hummingbird is primarily a bird of the East Coast, Central Plains. It doesn't really occur in California except as a very rare stray. Another hummingbird that is a bird of the mountains is the broad-tailed hummingbird. Looks like an anise, got kind of a reddish throat, kind of a medium-sized hummingbird. So found in the mountains. If you wanted to see a hummingbird like in the Rocky Mountain National Park, for example, in Colorado, this would be the species to think about. Color in hummingbirds is interesting. It's actually a matter of how the light reflects off the feathers. So the feathers have structural qualities that make them iridescent. And if you've ever tried to take a picture of a hummingbird, you may have looked at the throat and thought, well, it's all black. When it was flying around, it was so vivid. The Anna's hummingbird has such a vivid magenta throat. What happened? It just has to do with how your camera's facing the angle of the light, how your flash is interacting with it. So the color of a hummingbird has to do with where it is in relation to the flash or the sunlight. Hummingbirds do migrate, some of them. The Allen's, I mentioned, sticks around. Some of the Annas stick around in the winter. But other hummingbirds migrate, like the Rufous, and they go up to 2,000, 3,000 miles away. Where they're going is typically the American tropics. They're going to the warm, wet places, just like the snowbirds want to go to Cancun, or the spring breakers want to go to Cancun. So the hummingbirds go down to Central America as well. Humans can migrate, or at least we can get on a plane or hop on a bus and go someplace. If you're really, really interested in hummingbirds, the to-do spot on your list should be southeastern Arizona, which includes species that are normally found in more tropical areas. We have the northern range of a lot of Mexican species of hummingbirds that come into southeastern Arizona. So there you can see, for example, the broad-billed hummingbird, this lovely fellow, green and blue, the orange bill, magnificent broad-billed hummingbird. It occurs in California as a very, 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 very rare stray. But if you want to see them in the summer, you would go to southeastern Arizona. Another bird from Arizona, a little less common, is the violet-crowned hummingbird. Don't you like this one? Got this snowy white underside and then the purple above. Another bird that you would see in Arizona in the summer. Moving further afield, if you want to take a journey to, say, the middle of the Andes, if we go to Ecuador, man, we get some really great species there. One we saw a little bit earlier, that's the booted racket-tail. Don't you love those little white booties on its feet, and then it's got those great long tail streamers. Another bird that you could see in South America, and it comes to feeders, it's easy to see, you can even tell from my pictures here, the green-crowned brilliant, and the name tells you how much you're going to enjoy seeing one of those. And another one that you would enjoy seeing in the Andes is collared Inca, I-N-C-A, Inca, like the civilization. And as you can see, it has vivid white, but also dark blues and blacks. It's a very dark hummingbird, very striking in its arrangement. Let's think about what hummingbirds mean to us in a culture. They can be spirit animals. Some cultures believe they have healing powers, that they are harbingers of love. We even like to describe them in very fancy kinds of ways. If you know that term, a pod of whales, a pride of lions, those are called nouns of assemblage. And there are, of course, nouns of assemblage for birds, a birder of crows, for example. For hummingbirds, the names are just so good. You can speak of a bouquet of hummingbirds, a charm of hummingbirds, a glittering of hummingbirds, a hover of hummingbirds, a shimmer of hummingbirds, a tune of hummingbirds. These are the collective nouns for our friends the hummingbirds. Now, on the merry-go-round, carousel, as some might want to call it, many people want to ride a tiger, some want to ride the zebra. I want to ride the hummingbird. This is a modern-day hummingbird from a factory. We're almost at the end of our 100 facts. And if you've been keeping track, you might say, well, we're not quite there yet. We haven't got all 100 yet. And indeed, that is true. Where are the rest? They're waiting for you in the library. According to the catalog, there are 32 books about hummingbirds in the Altadena library system. Want to know the other 100 facts? You'll just have to explore them yourself. I'm Charles Hood with a Nature Note. And remember, support your public libraries.